Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the BBBC Chats. I'm delighted to be joined by two-time Palma winning captain Darren Enslin of Australia. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be with you.
We're almost exactly a month to the day since your famous victory in, I think, what everyone will regard as the greatest target rifle shooting match in history. Has it sunk in?
It has now. It didn't sink in for the first few weeks. The whole team has just been floating. It's been just incredible. I guess mainly because of the fact that it was such a tight competition, relief and emotion that we pulled it off.
It was an absolutely incredible performance. It was surreal. It was conditions unlike I think anybody has ever experienced at General de Wet. You don't expect to go there and see the flags down the poles. When you saw that at 900 meters on the second day, knowing what was in front of you, what was going through your mind? Talk us through how you were feeling. Were you calm? Were you nervous? Were you excited?
All right, I'll have a stab at it. I was, yeah, obviously emotions were elevated. I knew it was we were down to the wire, and I knew that everyone needed to be cool, calm, and collected. So I needed to portray that as the captain, and I got the whole team together as everyone would have witnessed. And I spoke very calmly to them that just to focus on the task ahead, and to just treat it like a normal, club fixtures day. Just think about the process of just delivering the best shot and doing it again and doing it again. And I closed and saying, guys, enjoy this. You've spent a lot of time, money, and effort to be here. It's come down to this, but you need to enjoy what you're doing. And it obviously worked. The team really did just concentrate and focus on delivering the best shots that they could. And I guess through the process, commanding the team and the coaches was be patient, pick the spot. Yes, the flags aren't doing much, but it could come down to V balls. So I did have my manager keep up to date with the V balls, and as you know, Great Britain fired incredible amounts of V balls. We did too, but I think that broke the record. Wasn't it over 1,000 V balls for the whole competition?
It was, yeah, and 167 at that final distance alone,
which is just unheard of.
Despite McCauley's best efforts, I think Brett and Mitch between them had 146 feet, 73 each. So that was obviously the culmination of 8 years for you. When we spoke back in February, I think it was, one of the interesting things to come out of that discussion was that you viewed New Zealand as a stepping stone to South Africa, and that the win in New Zealand was almost a bonus, and you couldn't really ask for two more different Palmas in terms of day 2 at Trentham and day 2 at Blum. How did you view the process when you arrived in Bloemfontein? What was your process as a team in terms of peaking when you needed to peak? I think everybody will realize that the results in not the warm-up matches, but it's wrong to call them that, the RSA and the Protea, you were perhaps not where people had expected Australia to be. Was that part of your preparation? Were you calm, or were you also thinking, "Oh, there's a bit of work to do here"?
No, it was actually all part of the strategy, and it's incredible that you noticed that, because I didn't think that it was so obvious. But the whole intention, I did, the whole culture infused within the team was that it was going to be a marathon. That the World Championships in South Africa is more of a marathon than most. In fact, Bisley in 28 will be another marathon, because there's a lot of shooting in the national championships. But if you compare New Zealand, you shot string there, and there was just 1 week. It wasn't the amount of team shooting as what was on the plate in South Africa. So the whole approach was take it easy, use the state championships and the warm up, the Free State Championships as an absolute warm up. Prepare yourself, change your rings, do what you need, and the same took place for the teams matches. It was experimental. We also we released some of our team members to the veterans and the under 25s. We embraced both the under 25s and veterans within the broader Australian team. So we were down to our bare minimum. So I know Great Britain probably shuffled a few shooters around, as did probably South Africa and the USA. But the focus was the World Championships was mandatory, and that is where we were going to draw the selection for the Palma team. So you obviously saw a step-by-step rise of how the Australians ended up on the podium. Day 3, I think Australia took just about every medal on offer, including the ultimate prize, which Ash gained for us. I did say to the team that I did expect an Australian to win the World Individual Championships. I think we had more of a chance in New Zealand because we had at least 5 in that lineup for the shoot-off. I knew it was going to be a bit more tricky with just the 2 in the top 10, but that was a spark that was required to initiate us and take us forward into the next performance, of which we knew was going to be a tougher performance in.
So that's 3 Aussie world champions in the last 3 world championships. Obviously, Ben, Steve, and now Ash. I'm sure Ash won't mind me saying that maybe outside of Australia, his name wasn't as perhaps recognized as some of the other internationally renowned shooters. Can you give us a bit of an insight into, for those who weren't on the ground in South Africa and maybe have never had the pleasure of meeting Ash, what he's like as a human and as a teammate?
Yep. Well, Ash just so happens to be a Queensland Rifle Association member. He's been in numerous Queensland teams with me. He's a plumber by trade. He runs a plumbing business in Toowoomba, which is the largest inland city in Australia. He's a very cool, calm, collected person. Been in the shooting scene since he was in the under 25s. But he's probably focused more on state teams rather than international teams. And he obviously took the plunge when it put his hand up for New Zealand. He shot in the top 10, so people should have been aware of his shooting prowess there. But Ash is just a good bloke. He's also in the coaching outfit in the Queensland team, so he knows a thing or two about coaching. He's very solid. He multiple Kings winner, country prize shoots. He's always the one to beat. He's as solid as you could get. So it was no surprise when he was up there, and no surprise when he delivered that last shot right in the V, right in the guts.
It was an incredible shoot in the final, and obviously to be drawn with Glyn in that center target was the dream draw for me as somebody who was doing made my job a lot easier because I didn't need to move. You mentioned there that Ash is also he's a key part of the coaching setup in Queensland, and one of the things that I noticed was that all of your coaches, so Sean, Jim, and Sean, Jim, Steve, and Hamish, they all had absolutely cracking, finishes in the world individual. It was something that I noticed, sat on my sofa here in the freezing north doing the scores during the essay grand, maybe not seeing some of the scores that I necessarily expected to see from some of your shooters. I mean, but a large part of that was because people took days off, people just didn't shoot. And so you could see there that there was clearly a strategy at play. And then that all changed as soon as the worlds kicked in, as you said. What that must have given your shooters such confidence in their coaches to have known that, and Jim, you had someone finish 12th, and I think Steve also, he had an unfortunate miss, but for that miss he'd have been in the top 10, and so on and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about your coaching unit and the confidence that must have imbued?
Absolutely. I think you asked me a question back in February. Why do I invest in some of the top shooters in the coaching chair? And I can't recall what answer I gave to you, but it's part of my culture, the change and shift in culture that I've worked hard on over the past 8 years, is to get your top informed current coaches, shooters, to be your coaches. I've got the list just in front of me here. Bailey was 12th, Negus 18, Pollock 20, and Sean 35. Now, for a shooter to lie down and to be coached by a coach who's finished in the top 35 of the World Individual Championships, that instills a lot of confidence in that shooter. And it demonstrates to the team, or to the shooting part of the team, that there's nothing to fear here. We know that all we got to do is fire a good shot, and the guys will do the rest. That to me is an important part of the culture that I've helped, I think, transition from previous Australian teams. If you look at the GB coaches, I think the top coach came 22nd, fell down to 61st position. In South Africa, your top coach was 12th, I think, in the Worlds, and the lowest ranking coach was 159. The way I look at, if I was selecting the GB coaches for the next Palma, I would put Barnett, Underwood, Luckman, and Patel as your coaching crew. Just saying.
Well, it's interesting. I've said to Matt Ensor, I said, is it time you considered going on the deck, given that he set so many coaching records now, of course, just pipped by your own Jim Bailey on day 2 to the overall. But from what you're saying there, maybe he should stay exactly where he is, and that's a very interesting perspective. What about, in particular, those top shooters do you think makes them, or made them, such brilliant coaches for you across those 2 days? Is there anything that you can pinpoint in particular?
Not really. I just think that Australia develops a lot of great shooters and coaches, but probably a bit more recognition needs to be given. If you think of the lineup that we had in the Palma team, we had 3 former world champions, 1 new world champion, under 25, 2 under 25 champions, 1 from the previous Palma and 1 from this one, and a veteran world champion. That's got to do something for an end result, don't you think? It's
I mean, I think looking at the talent, as you said, that you have on the that you had on the mound and that you had in the chairs, I mean, it's frightening. It's frightening. And if we look at the scores that were recorded not just on day two, but we have to remember that on day one, records were tumbling as well. After day one, what did you say to the team back at the hotel? Were you where you wanted to be? I think no one was in any doubt after day one that the Australia that they had perhaps thought that they'd seen in those in the build up to the World Championships was a very, very different Australia to the one that arrived on the mound at 700 meters in day one. But from your perspective, were you exactly where you wanted to be? Were you displeased with anything that you saw on day one? Did you think that there was room for improvement?
All right. Well, I was happy, and I wasn't happy. Not happy that we were only 2 points ahead of Great Britain, and 10 or 12 ahead of South Africa. South Africa were the team that were worrying me or concerned me right from day one. They had that spectacular performance in the international where I think they dropped 12 points or 13. I can't recall, but I thought this is it was a fairly tricky day, and I thought, wow, they've got the shooters, they've got the coaching sorted. I always knew their coaching home range advantage would be a tricky one to beat. But I was quietly confident the fact that Great Britain had lost 14 points at the 900 on day one. They were drawn right up along the flag line. There was a predominantly left wind. Occasionally it came in from the right. I think they fluffed up there. They shouldn't have dropped the 14 points. Peter Bromley came to me at the prize giving and said, Darren, I just want to commend you for only dropping 13 points at that 900 on day one. He said, where you were situated, you should have dropped double that. Look at what South Africa dropped. Great Britain drawn up along the flag line should not have dropped the points. And I think they're probably inwardly kicking themselves for that day one performance at 900. I think that's what actually cost them an end result. But
I mean, it was
to the team, sorry, I'll just close on saying the general debrief was, great day, guys. We're in front. It's where we need to be. Have an early night. Just think of dream of V-balls and let's go out tomorrow and do it again. It was as simple as that.
And you sat as you did in New Zealand, motionless in your very comfortable looking chair, behind the glasses, your hat on, face slathered in sunblock, and you have your little notebook. And I wonder whether you can share what you're writing as you're in that notebook.
I've got my notebook next to me. I'll just do it very quick. Okay. Basically it as the captain of the team, you're in charge of controlling the time allocation to shooters. You've got to manage the time. In Trentham, very, very difficult to manage the time. You've got to work out where the master coach is comfortable in what win brackets, and you've got to basically allocate and proportion that 100 minutes very wisely, because the last thing you want to do is just a mad scramble, blow the shots at the end, uncoordinated. So my book is all about each coach, every time a shooter finishes. I also monitor points dropped, whether they be helped assisted by a shooter, or whether it's a win bracket that we're fired out of. I'm constantly updating the win brackets, just to try and help the master coach in his approach. I test and challenge the master coach in brackets that he's comfortable or not comfortable to shoot in. What else do I write in there? How many points each team have dropped, the ones who are breathing down our neck. So
there's a lot going on. So what do you say to Jeff? Jeff, are you sure you're happy going on in this? Or should we be going on?
No, let's hammer down. yeah, not more than most times is yeah, what would you be using now, and would you be comfortable in this bracket if it's a stepped up bracket from the previous bracket we were using? As you would have seen, we were very, very patient in all the matches, except for probably the last 900, because that was just a more freedom of the shooters to shoot their rhythm, because there wasn't a lot to have to stop them for. But experience from New Zealand, just that's what my little book's all about. Because as you know, I think you were a coach in New Zealand, and you knew those brackets shifted incrementally as the 100 minutes drew down to an end.
And they certainly did. It's just unfortunately we always shot when it was the worst possible bracket. And I wasn't, yeah, exactly. I had to be a coach because I couldn't shoot with you know, half an arm missing. What was your biggest takeaway from day two? Did you learn anything new about yourself, about the sport? I mean, it was the most incredible occasion, and there was so much going on. And you know, as I said on the broadcast at the time, you, Great Britain, the South Africans, the Americans. I mean, the Americans and the South Africans on day two. It's a shame that the scores on day one were not where either of the South Africans or the Americans would have been happy with. But from my perspective, it made my job a lot easier, because covering two teams was hard enough, let alone covering four. What do you take from you know, your performance at 900, and you know, the match as a whole and the occasion for the sport?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. It's because there's so much to talk about, and for every team nailed it on day two, didn't they? America came second to us just merely by V-balls. South Africa just by one behind that, and GB one again behind that. New Zealand, Canada, and Germany obviously struggled a little bit more, but it just shows you how close the top four countries are, with their wealth of. Let's take the coaching equation out of it, because day one was a coaching competition, day two was a shooting competition. It just shows you how close the top 70 odd shooters are in the world, in their skill and performance. It's not easy to get down and to fire a 75, and some of the shooters were hammering 12, 13 centers. That's no ordinary feat. The level of marksmanship that I think from one Palma to the next, because this was my 7th Palma, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's phenomenal how well the shooters are shooting. Maybe it's time for ICFRA to consider making the balls smaller. Technology-wise, all the teams used the best that money could buy, the best barrels, the best components, the best powders. Yeah, maybe it is time now. Although you take the competition back to New Zealand, everyone will say, "What? Don't be so stupid, Darren." It's but maybe it is time, just to maybe go to line marking. You know, you hit the line, you're out.
Or we go to, you know, issued ammunition and issued barrels, maybe.
Well, that's taking a step backwards,
Yeah.
But that's my personal view. A World Championships is all about developing a team, surrounding yourself with the best players, the best component, the best of everything, and how you allocate your resources to developing the best, you know, equipment for what's available. That's part of the test, I think, is how good you are at that, and that shouldn't be taken away. But anyway, that's my personal view.
Fascinating. You said you mentioned New Zealand there, but obviously I think probably the second hardest range in the world, pretty close, is Stickledown, which is where the next Worlds is going to be. Are you fancying a crack at the hat trick?
Oh, look, I think I not done enough to defend the World Championships is yeah, a dream come true. And the privilege that probably a lot of captains, I know that Great Britain don't hand their captaincies, year after year to the same individual, but I'm very satisfied with what I've done. It's part of the culture in that I've helped develop now is to shift that leadership role, as well as the coaching and shooting platform. It's you need invigoration within the team, and momentum can only keep going, I think, if you reinvigorate the team. So I'm not putting my hand up for it. I think I've proudly done my bit for Australia. I would love to be part of, still be a part of the team, but that's for the next captain to choose.
And so finally, Australia have come close to winning at Bisley in recent years, but haven't quite managed to get over the line in the Colapore, for example, although they've run GB very close. What would your advice be to your successor for 2028? How do you go about beating GB on their home range at Stickledown?
Just follow the process that we've investigated, developed, and fine-tuned. Just stick to that process. It's a winning process. Don't deviate. That would be my only advice. How that fine-tuned strategy plays out, that's obviously something I keep bundled up and presented to the next captain moving forward. But essentially, well, you've seen our performance in the last two Palmas. Why would you deviate from that?
And finally, I just want to talk very briefly about Mitch Bailey. I don't think I've seen in my time. I've been lucky enough to shoot with some of the greatest in history, and the Patels, the Barnetts, the Luckmans, the Underwoods, Jim and Steve and people like that. It's frightening, isn't it, given how young he is? Second in the world in 2019 when he was 21? Third, I think, this time. Obviously won the under-25 World Championship. One off, he's dropped, barely dropped a point in two Palmas. What is it that makes Mitch so special?
Well, in Australia, we have a special person that you guys are well aware of over in the Northern Hemisphere, James Corbett, and he's been a prolific Kings and Queens winner in Australia, as well as obviously the Grand and the Queens in the UK. We've already dubbed him the next Corbett, because there's nothing more to say about that. But something that's quite interesting, when Mitch shoots at his home range, the F-class shooters actually try and compare their shoot to his. He regularly outguns them. If you convert his score to an F-class score, he's just an incredible young talent, and the world will see a lot of glorious victories come from that young man. But the prodigy of the great James Bailey. I mean, what more do you expect? Jim is an incredible human being. What he's achieved is also unbelievable, and Mitch has got the best mentor in the world. But we've got a lot more to see out of Mitch. That is for sure.
It's pretty frightening. Look, Darren, I just want to end by saying congratulations again. It was an absolute privilege of a lifetime to cover that across the 2 days, and especially on day two. So thank you to you and your team. Thank you for the time that you've spent both before and now, and congratulations. And we hope to see you at Bisley before too long.
Thank you very much, Dan.